If I'm sitting in front of an audience, and I often love to ask a question, how many hours do you think it's necessary to train if you really want to perform well in an Ironman? The response is typically 18, 20, 22 hours, somewhere in that range. But if you're stuck in this thinking that you really need to train 20 or more hours every single week to perform at your best Ironman or half Ironman, you need to think again. You see, there is a smarter and more strategic approach, one in which training integrates into your life. And I want to tell you how. I'm hosting a free webinar next week so that we can peel back the curtains and show you how to do it. Join me on March the 13th at 9 a.m. Pacific. That's noon Eastern, or for the important people in the world, the British people, that's 5 p.m. for you folks. You can learn how to optimize your training on just 8 to 12 hours a week. And you can train and race faster. That's a good thing. You can avoid injury, and you can also get to balance life outside of your sport. In fact, it's additive to everything that's important, whether it's how you're showing up for your family or friends or how you're showing up in the workplace. In this webinar, you're going to discover why traditional training tends to lead to burnout, and instead how to maximize your performance in minimal time. Key strategies for nutrition, hydration, recovery. Plus, we'll give you some free trial access to our video-based coaching, something that's a lot of fun but also really valuable. And we're going to give you a free training PDF so you can put some of the principles and action them into some real-world training strategies for yourself. Save your spot now. Head to the URL in the show notes. Join us. And if you cannot attend live, do not despair. If you register, we will send you the replay. Of course, you're going to spend some time with me, so if you can attend live, I recommend it because I'm going to offer you a chance to ask me any questions that you have around the topic. I hope to see you there and enjoy today's show. Take care. I'm Matt Dixon, and welcome to the Purple Patch Podcast. The mission of Purple Patch is to empower and educate every human being to reach their athletic potential. Through the lens of athletic potential, you reach your human potential. The purpose of this podcast is to help time-starved people everywhere integrate sport into life. And welcome to the Purple Patch Podcast. As ever, your host, Matt Dixon. And I'm not the only host today because we get to welcome back Purple Patch coach Max Gering to the show. Max, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here again.
Well, last time we did this, a couple of weeks ago now, we said, we'll see how this goes. It's something new. We'll ask for feedback. And I thought that you were going to get kicked off the island.
I thought I
But
was going
there
to
you
get
go.
fired, potentially, if it didn't
You
go
thought
well.
you were going to get, oh, there you go. And, but no, there was resounding, promising and positive feedback. So we thought, you know what, why don't we do it again? And so we're going to have a coach's conversation, a little bit of a chat around what we're labeling go time. And what I mean by that for you guys, the listeners, is that we have done, if we cast our memories back, all the way back till the fall, we did a couple of episodes around off-season and the importance of the continuation of the performance journey after your last race of the season. We talked about what off-season was. Then we talked about at the end of the year going into the start of this year around our prep phase that we are really just in the midst of right now and starting to transition. But we're right on that cusp now where things are getting serious. And a lot of athletes' races are looming. We can start to see them on the horizon. They're not just mythical things way in the future. They're starting to have their grip. And so things are getting serious. And the truth is, for the vast majority of athletes, it is kind of go time. It's time to get a little more serious, trying to lose a little bit of the flexibility in our training life, get a little bit more precise and specific to really drive through to the breakthroughs. But what does that mean? Because we see so often, Max, we see so often athletes making a lot of mistakes at this time where suddenly they do a binary switch and accelerate. So I thought that we could get together, have a conversation, hopefully impart some of our perspective, your perspective, my perspective on what athletes need. But before we dig into the meat and potatoes today, I'd just love to hear how you're doing. Been at Purple Patch for 8 or 9 months now. You still own your own coaching business. You're integrated. So, How have you been over the last few weeks, and how's it going at Purple Patch so far?
Things are good. A lot has changed since we were last together up in San Francisco. I would say, how to put it? How would I put it? My world has exploded. Started out coaching and now doing many, many other things beyond coaching. Still, a lot of my time is spent coaching our Purple Patch athletes, but really getting my hands dirty with the broader Purple Patch community. Besides coaching, I've started meeting with our incoming athletes. So you can think of it as an athlete concierge, meeting with potential athletes, whether they're going to go to one-to-one coaching, to our run squad, our tri squad, but meeting with them, hearing where they've been, where they want to go, and making sure that we get them set up with the program that's the best fit for them. So that's a lot of how I spend my time, which is exciting. I get to meet a lot of interesting people. Spending
Yeah.
more and more time with you. We're making content. I'm editing your videos, so if we're not talking, I'm playing your videos on repeat and hearing your nuggets of wisdom and editing a lot of content and getting my hands dirty with social media. So it's been fun and it is fun. It's exciting times for Patch.
It's really fun, and it's actually we could almost call you the gatekeeper, couldn't we? Because I don't think there's really a Purple Patch athlete joining now that doesn't first have a conversation with you, where it's really helpful for you to understand their journey and help them get onto the right track. You must have some really interesting conversations with people, and pretty broad range of people that work with Purple Patch. Huh?
Yeah, for sure. And I think something that I've learned from when I started working in Pro Patch is one of the most important things to do at the beginning of any athlete's journey is to set the lens. So I really love the conversations that I have because I think that when you have a really good conversation in the beginning and you can set your mindset right for how you're going to approach the change that you're going to make when you join us at Purple Patch, it sets the athletes up for success. So it's a lot of responsibility, but I enjoy it.
It's great. And we've also been doing, and a part of it was perhaps because I mentioned it on the show a few times, but I know that you've been one of the primary coaches talking to athletes internally on our squad program, having some supporting consultations with them to plan their seasons, as well as a whole group of folks externally. So people that are not on an ongoing basis coached by Purple Patch, but you've been working with 60-minute
Mhm.
consultations. Anything interesting that's come up on those? I know those are a lot of fun because you're really sort of helping people with a big, quick, hard hitting, almost 60 minutes of power. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's perfect for a lot of our listeners because there's a lot of people out there that are they're type A triathletes. They like to be in control, but are maybe lacking a little bit of clarity. So that the athlete that is super autonomous doesn't want to change what they're doing in terms of working with a different coach or a different program, but just needs some outside perspective so they can keep driving the wagons, as you say, forward on their own. Those conversations are really helpful for that type of person. Um,
You had any fun ones lately by chance? I'm interested because I don't get to hear too much of this. Any interesting stories that maybe can inspire some of the listeners?
yeah, I think something that comes up a lot, and it doesn't matter what the athlete's dealing with. It's being able to when someone's stuck, when someone's not necessarily getting the results that they want, it's being able to assess a little bit about what's been going on and why what's been happening has been happening, and then let go. Kind of have this clean mental break and a practical break of okay, these are the things that I'm going to implement. Um, and you just hear a lot about people talking a lot about the past. I've done this, I've done that, and in the conversation, helping them understand that the story they're telling themselves about the way sport has been in their life, the way they've been feeling. I've always run slow. I'm not a good swimmer. I need to improve at the bike. Their self talk becomes this self fulfilling prophecy. And in the conversations,
Mhm.
just helping people break free of that so they can then go do the things and tap into their potential. Um, but you get some interesting people.
It's interesting because it's yeah, I've talked a lot on the show about reflection
Mhm.
and how it's I mean, we know as a part of the Sunday special every week, we want a purple patch athlete to pause, reflect, come out, what went well, what went and so often when I think about a consultation, you think about, looking forward. But so it's interesting that you highlight actually in order to go forward, you've got to first pause, reflect, and understand so that you can really set the right lens going forward in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a key part of moving forward. And then I think the last thing is also reminding people, let's be really ambitious. But going back to if I've had any fun ones, let's have fun. this is a hobby that I'm passionate about. And I think we'll dive into that when we talk about mistakes that people make in this time of the year. But reminding people they're allowed to have fun and that performance is fun, and getting people to have that energy about going on their performance journey and not feeling so stressed out about training for their race.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I was just actually on a podcast this morning being
Mhm.
interviewed, and we talked a lot about you are allowed to have fun. Like you can have permission. You don't need to turn this into a second job. That's important. Talking of fun, I desperate to ask you because we talked about it a little bit internally, but you had the Kona camp experience. We've got the Napa camp coming up, but late January was your first sort of purple patch camp that you've come and coached on a week away in Hawaii. How you navigated that suffering, no tongue can tell. But we've got Napa coming up, which is going to be another big camp for us, really important, high value. How was Kona for you from a eyes wide
Mhm.
open coach? I'm sure you've done other camps before, but how was that as an experience for you as a coach?
It was a really unique training camp experience. I've coached on training camps, and I've been an athlete in training camps. Um, and most of those camps have been focused really around just let's train really, really hard for several days, and you know, throw together all this type of training that we can't do at home when we're busy with normal life. But it was always missing this community aspect, this like team cohesion aspect. So that was really fun about the Purple Patch Camp, was getting to grow together as a team and really come together in a short time span, and see how that allowed athletes to tap into their potential in new ways, to get out of their comfort zone and to do things that they didn't think they were able to do. Um,
Yeah,
and just for an example, it's not, you know, you spend a lot of time you're talking about leadership. People have a positive influence on others around them in many different ways. So there's some people that are the loud leaders that really, okay, you're coming with me. We're going to go bike up this hill hard, and you're not going to stop when you want to stop, things like that. But just noticing how people, you can have a huge positive impact on somebody even without realizing it. You don't have to speak to them directly. We pick up a lot of
yeah.
behaviors around us, and so just from the side, seeing athletes bond um, subconsciously and have that impact on one another.
Yeah, it was, it's really interesting. If every as you got to see, but every camp that we do on the last night, which is always the, what we call the banquet, we have a big meal and we do some fun awards, mostly, a little bit poignant, but a lot of humor in there as well. Uh, but I always find myself getting a little choked up, which is very unlike me because I'm English, and B, it's like, hang on, I'm at camp number, 50 or whatever it's been over the last 20 years. So why does this one always get to me? But I think the reason is that it always startles me how you have such a broad range of goals, talent levels, quite frankly, backgrounds across these sort of camps, and how we do get them everyone out of their comfort zone, whether they're a stronger athlete or a weaker athlete. Everyone gets out of their comfort zone, but the galvanizing impact of doing it together, and how by day 2 or 3, it's like we're locked in, we're a team. This is it. And I think your point is really sage. It's not just the loud people that are the leaders and the influencers. Sometimes it can be just really, really positive. I think of Yoko,
Mhm.
lovely Japanese woman that joined us that, was, her English was much better than my Japanese, but that doesn't mean it was gold, and yet she had a really positive impact on that camp. She just worked really hard, was really consistent, was always there, and started to become a sort of a beacon in many ways. And it's really galvanizing. It's pretty fun to
Yeah.
go through that. Pretty magical experience. Now we've got to do it again in April in Napa, which is a very, very different experience, but equally fun and hopefully helpful.
Yeah.
Just keep them all safe.
I'm excited about it.
Should we talk about the topic at hand?
I guess so. The time has come. It's go time, as they
It is
say.
go time for us, isn't it? So I'll just lead the grounding on this a little bit, and so we're into March, and we're launching. We can safely say with that that off season is done. If we go back to my conversations that I had, me pontificating by myself, but I talked about off season being October, November, December, or any time which your last race was done after a break, you enter that point. So it's a little bit like a river, you can enter at any point. Then the first part of January and first half of February, we, Purple Patch, wanted to have athletes to retain a preparatory mindset, an off-season mindset in many ways. But now we can, almost smell the looming good weather, the longer hours of daylight that are coming, and races are up on the horizon for most people. So it's getting serious. And so the reason that I wanted to have you on today and us have this talk about it is this is really the moment that we start to see athletes put their serious hat on, start training hard, and also sabotage their seasons with a whole bunch of mistakes that are easily avoided. And that's what we want to do. So I want to actually focus around pitfalls and mistakes rather than just this is what you should do. It's
Mhm.
like these are the things that we see that you just don't need to do, and you can really go through. So we're going to break apart a few considerations where we sort of go from winter to spring, from prep to build to early season racing, etc. And the one other thing I'd say is that I think it's important. You mentioned reflection earlier on about having people look back what they've done. So why don't we do that as purple patch athletes? Where are we at right now over the last few months? Well, we went through off season and a sort of prep phase in many ways, and the bullseye of it all, almost universally for all of our athletes, was strength and conditioning.
Mhm.
Very, very important. Building body. I know passion of yours. You led all of our strength in Hawaii. Fantastic. Really great mobility, being a part of it, movement patterns. So strength was the bullseye. So we're along with that. On a swim standpoint, we did a lot of technical swimming. Coach John Stevens designed with myself some really good stuff. He really refreshed up the swim program this year. I thought it was great, and there was a lot of technical swimming. We weren't obsessed around fitness development necessarily for most athletes, but we also strayed more towards short intervals. I really like that for early season swimming, shorter, faster swimming, consistent rest. So a whole bunch of 25s, a whole bunch of 50s, rather than a bunch of slow, laborious 600, 800. So that was the sort of our swimming. The bike,
It's
a lot of
tough.
folks that we coach tough. Yeah, we'll talk about it. A lot of bikes tough. So, many purple patch athletes didn't get to ride outside really much because of weather and safety or other considerations. So a lot of indoor riding, obviously. And that was really focused on 2 things. Number 1, terrain management skills, artistry, good posture, really, really powerful. I think some of the best stuff that we do in the whole year is in these last blocks of training going into this next block. We did a whole bunch of, very, very short high intensity work, and that's really crazy. And then we'll probably come back to the bike because I wanna hover on that just a little bit, and I'm gonna ask you a question. But then the run finally for folks, we did a lot of very, very easy running, high frequency running. Some people were running almost every day, and then just some short bouts of high intensity, hill sprints for 20, 30 seconds, flat strides, etc. But not really very much hard intervals in running at all. We really, as a group, obviously some people are, but under the umbrella, we've really been building resilience. But I'm interested to hear before we dive into the mistakes and stuff. Short high power. You attend live. You were on there this morning. The bike sessions that we do, the video bike sessions.
Mhm.
You're in San Diego right now. I'm in San Francisco. You'd be surprised at how much high power we've done, high intensity, and how tough those sessions are.
Yeah. For anybody that's lucky enough to do the live classes, even if you're doing the on-demand video recorded sessions, I like to say to people that are joining Purple Patch, the bike program is like Peloton for triathletes on steroids. It's a lot of fun. Um, but it was tough. These VO2 max sessions, I found myself going into workouts as a coach intimidated, knowing that if I do the session as prescribed and I really push myself, it's going to be really hard. I'm going to get out of my comfort zone. My legs are going to be burning. My lungs are going to be burning. But the really cool thing about the way they're designed is that they set you up for success. So they're very challenging, but very doable. And that was I think the most enjoyable and the magical part of the off season is we're going to go hard in short bursts. We're going to make sure that it's attainable so that you can continue to string together consistency and success. Um, I think it's a really safe environment for athletes to push themselves. Safe in terms of physically, when you push yourself so hard on the run, you run the risk of injury. And I think a lot of athletes
Yeah,
that
for
end up
sure.
coming to us push themselves and try and do their VO2 max work on the run, and then that has negative effects. So I think physically, in terms of impact, it's a really safe place to push yourself. Um, and there's something really powerful for time-starved athletes about having a short session when you only have an hour. Some athletes only have 45 minutes to work. You can get a lot done if you're going hard as you're supposed to.
Mhm. It's funny you talk about hard. There's so much I can't help but tell a story. I got a wonderful guy that I have started coaching. He's a real joy to coach. His name's Bob, and he's he's a student. He's so thirsty for learning,
Mhm.
and he's also really open to try different things. And he left a platform in which he was being asked to do an FTP assessment every single month.
That
You know, so
sounds
a
miserable.
20-minute time trial every month. Yeah, and, yeah, forget about the other platform, it doesn't matter, but I just thought, that just sounds awful. Just absolutely awful, but interestingly, and he's a guy that's sort of my size and, so a sort of bigger guy, if you wanna call it that. I'm 6'2", he's probably not 6'2", but we probably weigh a similar weight, we've got some mass between us, and he's quote functional threshold, which is his barometer, is very metrics based and very concerned around heart rate and where it should be and the power of zone 2 and how much into zone 4 should he go to and should he do another assessment and all of this stuff. And, for the first month I've just completely peeled it away and I said, Bob, you're just going to freaking stamp on the pedals and go as hard as you freaking can twice a week. It's going to be strength endurance, big gear, the work that we've just started doing. So it's lucky it's serendipitous on timing. And you're going to do a month of this
Mhm.
high intensity stuff. No barriers, like no barriers, no thoughts, no metrics. Dive in. I want you to go freaking hard. And he's like, well, what about the zone? Blah, blah. Take the handbrake off. Go strong. Have fun. That's just go have fun with it. And of course, he can join the live class. You've seen him on there, and so he gets my stupidity. He also gets Angus singing in his ear. But I bet his quote FTP that's been assessed once a month for the last 2 years and hasn't moved. I bet it's up 50 watts right now in a month, just because. And it's not physiological yet. There's nothing magical. It just
Mm.
what happens so often with athletes. They get so shackled by these metrics and trying to be so precise, sometimes you just got to go and you open up and don't worry, there's still lots of easy stuff. Zone 2 is still important. Yeah, I've read it all. It's all, yes, and I do. And we're going to do plenty of that stuff. But it's really liberating to see someone just go through to the next level and really rock and roll. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think you really learn that in the live classes with the blind intervals. So for those listening that don't know what I'm talking about, you do see metrics as you're riding, and then the way you program the workouts is there's certain intervals where you don't see any metrics. You can't see your cadence, you can't see your power, and you have to dial in that inner animal and that feel. And that really teaches you to be super present and put the metrics on the side and truly understand one, what your potential is, and also how to control that potential when you have to go zone 3, zone 2 by feel. Also, that's
Yeah.
challenging for people.
I think it's a great point. That's actually one of the most powerful tools of that platform
Hmm.
is to be able to actually have people ride, still be capturing, still feel the tension, still feel the grade and everything like that, but ride blind as we call it. It's really good. So anyway, now it really is go time. So that was a long introduction. Let's go with it. Let's go through some mistakes and we'll go from there. I'm going to kick it off. I'm going to start with one that I'm going to ask you to lead to begin, and then we'll talk about it because most listeners here are thinking whether it's a spring marathon, whether it's obviously triathlon, half Ironman, whatever it is, and it's swim, bike, run. I want to start with strength
Hmm.
actually. This is the time-honored mistake that I think many athletes have committed to strength successfully in off-season. But now the hours start to creep up, the days get longer, they start to ride, they run more, they think about the intensity, their legs get a bit tired because they're loading up on the focus on the swim bike run or the run if they're just a marathon runner, etc. And it goes by the wayside and people let strength dissolve or let it be very much a passenger. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes for a professional athlete and even more so a regular
Mhm.
time style busy unbusy amateur athlete as well. I'd love your thoughts on it.
Yeah, and I think because people make this mistake is why we have to convince people to make strength their bullseye in the off season. Because they neglect strength starting right about now for several months, then the fall comes around and we have to completely course correct. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about turning your back on strength, don't. And then when the off season comes around, you'll actually have more time to work on new projects instead of needing to work on strength as your bullseye every off season. You can just continue strength training, maybe ramp it up a little bit. Um, Look, it is hard for people's in people's defense. It is hard when you need to start to add in more rides, more runs, more swims. You're thinking about your Ironman, your half Ironman. You haven't been in the pool more than once, and something has to give. So I think people turn their back on strength, not necessarily because they're anti-strength, because they don't know how to manage their time and they don't know how to weave strength training into their training as they're ramping things up. So one thing I tell my athletes a lot is that we need to have a long-term perspective on strength. And so our goal with strength, depending on the athlete at this point in the season, it doesn't need to be to make the biggest strength gains week to week. Maintenance is really important. So even if you're bringing volume of strength training down, you can still maintain the strength that you've built, which is important for performance and longevity and health in life. And you can still make strength gains. You just have to accept that you're going to do it at a slower rate. And that's okay. Your goal is to continue to progressively get strong over the course of 2025. So if you reduce strength volume to make room for other stuff, but you still consistently strength training, you still consistently strength train, you will progress over the year,
Yeah.
just at a little slower rate. And then on a practical note, I would say one way to strength train at this time of year when you are time starved is to shorten your workouts. And if you can have some strength equipment at home, it's a huge time saver. Being able, just like you taught us coaches to do with runs, suggesting athletes do quick 20-minute runs before dinner to build tissue resilience. Same thing goes with strength. If you have a kettlebell at
Mhm.
home, if you had a pair of dumbbells at home, you can do short 20-minute workouts before dinner or other times throughout your day on the weekend. And that volume slowly adds up. And it's a really good way to make sure you're staying on top of your strength training as training builds.
Yeah, I'll add two things to that. That I think that the other venue, for, particularly for folks that travel with
Hmm.
work, is strength is a great thing. Like most hotels have pretty decent, or even if they're grubby, some form of gym in there, and you obviously choose the hotel that has the gym if it's all possible. But it's really good for something to do on the road. Obviously, running is because you just need a pair of shoes, and in most climates and environments, you're okay to run. But strength is a good tool for travel, I would say. The other part of it that you mentioned there, longevity and health, I think it's important when athletes start to get focused in on, let's make it up, someone's racing Ironman Texas, someone's racing, pick a race, Mallorca in May in Europe, whatever it might be, and you get very
Hmm.
pigeonholed, narrow focused on this race. But why are we doing this in the first place? Yes, we want you to get faster, and yes, you want to achieve your goals. But there's a long arc for the vast majority of folks in which strength training has these incredibly important non-negotiable benefits that we should be doing year round for cognitive health, for tissue health, for bone density, for body composition, for energy throughout the day, for longevity. Like, so there's all of this stuff that you want to be doing it anyway as a human being. So the last thing you would do is turn your back on that. And I would actually argue that that is strength training for a regular human being that's not training for an event. It's that and daily activity and exercise,
Hmm.
which is really the go back to the bullseye is there. So on a broader perspective for our health and quality of life, we shouldn't be skipping it in the first place.
Yeah.
And yeah. I think it's good.
Okay, one
Um,
last
uh,
thing before if someone's listening to this, okay, but how do I not turn my back on strength? Another tip is don't underestimate the power of body weight workouts. So if you don't have equipment at home and you're at home and you want to bang out a strength workout, if you do enough body weight strength work, it will help you achieve your goals and it will keep you moving forward and maintaining the strength you have. So just not having that all or nothing mindset around strength between an hour in the gym and nothing, there's a good 20-minute transition in there.
yeah, like lunges, bodyweight squats, dips, push-ups,
Hmm.
etc. Just and particularly as a bridge, yeah.
Hmm.
So if you've got 4 days you don't have gym access, whatever it
Exactly.
might be, well, we'll do some of that every day, and you go from there. So I'm going to let you lead the next one. What's your next mistake? If you've got something for me.
Yeah, I want to ask you about you talk a lot the triathletes ramp. We're about to do a webinar. So if you're listening to this when this comes out, we're going to be doing a webinar on March 13th. And the last webinar that I was a part of, you talked a lot about the triathletes ramp and how it's a big mistake people
Mm.
make. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that for people that have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, triathletes ramp. It's good. I think it's a huge mistake of and this is either folks that are coming out of the new year. So I talked about this, or all right, it's the X in the calendar.
Hmm.
March 1st. It's time to go, and it's a little bit like if you're on a really powerful motorcycle and you've got an open highway in front of you and you just yank the throttle and whoop, and you go flying off the back of the motorcycle. That's what I see a lot of athletes doing, where they sort of go from zero to hero way too quickly, and it comes with a cascade of challenges. So how does someone accumulate massive fatigue or massive injury risk? And of course, relative to life stress, total training load in terms of volume and intensity is one factor, but a place where athletes get a lot of immediate injuries, Achilles, calves, hamstrings, a lot of lower leg, is from going from X in the calendar and accelerating too quickly, adding load. So the actual ultimate weekly training load combination index of intensity and volume might actually not be too much, but they get up there too quickly. They try and get up there in a week. It's almost like a stepper. And if you can ramp and just take a little bit more of a patient 2, 3, 4 week slow incremental build, the body has time to become familiar with the stress and adapt to that added stress and then get stable and consistent. So, quite often, athletes get a lot of fatigue accumulation and injury, not because their regular training program is too much, but they've ramped to it too quickly. And so that really patient, and that takes the long arc of perspective. Number one, it also means, hopefully for athletes, it's a big part of the reason we talk about the value and power of off-season prep phase, etc. Your first point around strength, that you never let the boulder stop
Hmm.
because it's really hard to get going again. So that's sort of I would say one thing that is incredibly important. So if you are behind the eight ball right now and you're sort of getting going, the last thing you can do, e- e- even if you do, there's nothing wrong with having an X in the calendar, but you have to remain objective with what's my starting line right here. And so if you are getting more serious, it's a steady ramp always. There's never I always like to say there's never a bang.
Hmm.
It's always a whoosh. So if you're cresting a hill on the bike, you don't bam accelerate, you whoosh over the top. If you're It's all about momentum. So you're looking to build momentum. And I always like to talk about it if someone's just starting the journey, but even here when it's go time, it's building mini victories. I one of the coaches I really like, I know him personally, and I enjoy chatting to him, but I also monitor his stuff on social media. A guy called Steve Magnus, fantastic guy. He's been on the show once or twice. He always talks about winning workouts. It's
Hmm.
such a great thing. There's very few times you should fail in workouts. Well, you shouldn't fail weeks of workouts either. You should build it, and it comes to that. How do you actually get ready? And I think this really couples with over the last few months, we've been encouraging athletes to have a little bit of capacity to grow. And so, what we have in our life is most of us have very busy lives. We've got family, friends, social life, work commitments. You're at Purple Patch, so you've got a lot of work commitments because I expect everything. And and then you've got leftover time for all of your good supporting habits and training. And so many people just run up to their capacity or dump a training program on top of life. So I'd sort of say the triathlete's ramp is two things. Number one, accelerating up to load too quickly, or just thinking, all right, I've been really patient up till now, but now I need to go and do my 20 hours because I've only got 8 weeks until X. And that's where people just get absolutely destroyed. And it ruins seasons, it ruins enjoyment, it ruins performance
Hmm.
potential. So I would almost say that's our number one thing is patience, 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 long-term thinking.
Yeah. You said what you said at the end. First of all, I love all that and completely agree. And what you said at the end got me thinking. You said they see the 8 weeks and then they ramp it up. And
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I think a lot of it stems from people getting anxiety about a race, anxiety about a deadline, and then they make all these decisions. I haven't been doing this. I haven't been doing enough of that. I need to compensate. And that causes them to make a lot of mistakes. And so I think if athletes can just do a double take, look in the mirror, talk themselves, and make sure that they're operating from a rational place, a place of patience, a place of perspective, and not from a place of anxiety, they're much more likely to make the good decisions on their own and not make that mistake of ramping too quickly.
Yeah, I had a call with an athlete, conversation with an athlete yesterday where I encouraged them not to start building cages around themselves.
Mm.
They were so worried about a summer Ironman and whether they were going to be ready or not, and if they were going to be able to finish it, and that all of their mind, all of their emotion was drawing to what ifs. I said, you don't worry about something that may or may not happen. Let's come back and let's control the things that you can control right now, and ultimately you have, whether it's 8 weeks, whether it's 16 weeks, whether it's 12, whether it's 24 weeks, the only thing we can do is control the things that we can control and do the very best things, execute as well as we can to get ourselves as ready as possible. And even if you do all of that, you still are going to have setbacks. You still are going to have fears. And I don't know many athletes that get to the race and say, I've done everything and I'm perfect. You still are always going to get to a race and be like, what else could I have done?
Mhm.
That's a really normal human condition. We don't be like, I'm ready. And so, yeah, like lean into the things that you can control, logic, not emotion, and double down and have a little bit of patience. And I will say, it's remarkable. I had flu last week,
Mhm.
and the start of the week, as you know, a couple of days that I was just really knocked out. And when I had flu, I couldn't even imagine lifting up a weight or going for a run, you just feel terrible. And yet, now a week later, I feel very strong, very healthy, got back to it, did a couple of strength sessions, did a run session, etc. I can't even remember what it was like or how I felt so sick. The body is such an amazing adaptive mechanism that you just need to trust that if you string together 2, 3 weeks, the whole world can feel different, look different, be different physiologically. So you got to trust the process a little bit, I would say.
Yeah. And before we dive into the next one, because I know we need to keep moving, we could talk forever. Something that came to mind is when I said anxiety, and we talked about this just now, is there is that person's they're nervous about their Ironman in the summer. They're also excited, and there's a lot of duality in life and sport. Nothing's things aren't a lot of things aren't black and white. And so, I think as a coach, something I was just having a conversation with an athlete who's training for Ironman Texas, and I was talking to her about. On one hand, we want to be very excited about the race, and we do want to think about it because it's your A race, and we're driving towards it, and it's really important for you. At the same time, we can't be overly excited and be consumed by it all the time. And so, yes, as you start your season, as you ramp things up, it's important to think about what you're training for and why, and have, a fire under you to help you prioritize the things you need to prioritize, but be aware that it's not too much.
Yeah. I think that's great. I mean, like a small tangential point in that when athletes are really getting ready for A
Mhm.
races, and I love them to carve out a little block of time to say, yeah, spend 30 minutes going through, you know, your plan, your visualization, whatever you like to do, but then try and compartmentalize that and say, I've thought about that for today. So now I'm not going to obsess about it, rather than it can become all consuming and exhausting, frankly.
Yeah.
If you spend 2 weeks obsessing around anything, it becomes exhausting and tiresome. You want to be excited on race day. You don't want to be fatigued. So anyway, it's a tangent.
All right.
I'm going to do I'm going to do another one here.
Go for it.
I'm going to banner it as food for fuel.
Okay.
And here's a big mistake that folks make. We spent a lot about building really good nutritional habits, and anchoring around protein,
Mhm.
and the very simple rule of thumb, eating about a gram of protein per pound of body weight. Very challenging for people to get in, but that's important for your foundation of health. Eating a ton of fiber, so lots of fruits and vegetables, and some carbohydrates to support training. But one of the big mistakes that I see athletes make is they sort of have got healthy eating as a platform, but then we start to ramp and build training load. And for a whole host of reasons, athletes fail to then layer on the required additional calories, and most of those additional calories need to come in terms of fuel, a little bit more protein, but a lot more carbohydrate, starchy carbohydrate. And athletes fail to do that and start to get into a lot of problems, a lot of maladaptation, tissue decline, injuries, fatigue, performance challenges, etc. So I would say food for fuel, not what ramping calories to support that added training load. Love your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think this is for all the athletes that are okay. Now my Ironman training's kicking in. I need to go from off season to Ironman training, um, because your weekends I think are going to look a lot different as you start to ramp training up. All of a sudden, maybe you have an over distance swim on Friday. You have a long ride and a brick workout on Saturday, and then a long run on Sunday. And I see this mistake most around weekends because the training midweek a lot of times this time still tends to stay the same. Time starved hour on the bike on a Tuesday, but it's during the week athletes are forgetting that they need to fuel not just to recover from the session they did, but already start fueling for the next session.
Hmm.
If you finish a long brick workout on a Saturday afternoon and you're waking up early on Sunday to ride and you're coming off a big week and you did a big strength session or a swim on Friday, the engine's burning and you need to remember that you're not fueling in a vacuum. So that's something that I see people struggle with a lot. And I think you're right. It's hard because sometimes it feels counterintuitive. They've just spent the off season trying to eat healthier and eat less carbohydrates because the training volume's been down and that habit's been ingrained. And so athletes, what I would suggest they do is look at their training. If they're not using a program like Fuel In, look at your training in the beginning of the week and make a note to yourself where you need to be extra intentional about fueling. Because again, it's
Yeah.
habitual. And so if you're not cognizant of it going into the week, you'll easily forget and just resort back to your old habits of which will result in underfueling.
I'm glad you actually brought up fueling, because it's interesting, because it what that and they're a great team over there. But one of the things that enables it sort of empowers athletes to put intention behind their eating habits. And I always like, I've had a discussion on this show with Scott Tyndall, the co-founder of Fuel In. They sort of talked about the off season is great to cement foundational habits, but I think you're exactly right. Then it's a bit weird emotionally
Hmm.
and physically and logistically challenging to start pile on a whole bunch more rice or breads or pastas, and there's an emotional like I have the same thing, and that's where people run into trouble. So I do like their platform and system to say, no, this is a great meal that you're going to have, which is more of a sort of health focused meal, foundation, building blocks, adaptations, nutrients. This is a meal either priming, as you talked about, or post, that's really performance, that you need to layer on top of that high quality nutrition more fuel to get ready, or to focus, and taking some of the guesswork out for that. A couple of weeks ago, we had Panos
Hmm.
Kukulas show. Great interview that we did with him. His wife Helen leverages fueling. is not a triathlete, an athlete, but how she's had so much success. She said, "I stopped looking uh, at eating habits as what do I want and more what do I need." And I think athletes can learn a lot from that. That's a lifestyle sort of athlete, as if you might label her anything. But it's like, what do I need, not what do I want? And it shifts the whole relationship. That's why I started with food for fuel. I can't help but tell one quick story of this, and I think I've told it on the show before. But we had on the live bike, as you saw, and I told a story about Sarah Piampiano, Purple Patch Pro. I've told many stories about Sarah, as she's a fantastic athlete and person. But in the latter stages of Sarah's career, where she was probably 37 years of age and had done really well, won multiple Ironmans, and in the last couple of years, she just went bam and went up. And in reflection, I as a coach didn't change very much. Now, another year, another year, another year, we went on. But the biggest injection that we had was really the starting point of fueling, because uh, Sarah found Scott Tyndall. Sarah was the first triathlete that Scott Tyndall worked with. And Sarah and Scott, in many ways, you think, oh, he's never worked with a professional triathlete. And now you've got a professional triathlete working with them. Is that a flaw? But actually, it was the reverse. It was a complete gift, because he looked and just said, I don't care what you're trying to do. You're not eating enough. And he was having her eat on a daily basis 1,500 to 2,000 more calories every day. Like I said, huge, extra 30 or 40% of calories. She was eating 4, 5, 6, 7,000 calories, depending on the training load, every day. And that was the injection where for the last couple of years, it just went bam. And you know what really improved? Her staying power off the bike. And I remember thinking, having arguments with Scott. This is only 4 or 5 years ago, arguments because I thought he was a lunatic, because he wanted her to fuel with 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour. You can't do that, Scott. How the sport changes. He was without doubt one of the guys on the frontier of that whole, not only being able to absorb more calories, but having the direct performance benefit of doing so. Not in the first 5 hours, but the staying power. And so I don't think he gets enough credit in the sport.
Mhm.
He was a frontier changer in many ways. So, yeah, really interesting guy, not shackled by the sport, not institutionalized. And he's coming in. He came from rugby, British rowing, Maple Leafs hockey,
Mhm.
professional sport, but just like, you need more calories. It's very simple.
Yeah.
So
It's
there
a
you go.
it's a big performance unlock, and it's a, if you don't do it, it's a mistake, and it can completely derail your season before it starts. And if you do it, it's a huge performance unlock. And I think the mindset's
That-
shifting your mindset. It's not a hassle. It's a part of your plan. It takes a little bit more attention. And just last thing on intention is, do you ever ask an athlete, I'm an athlete, I didn't feel so good in my long run. And I say, okay, what did you eat before? Or what did you eat Saturday? What did you eat Friday? And they're like, I don't know. I don't remember. If you don't really remember what you're eating, it's a sign that you probably need to be a little more intentional about what you're eating. And that's a good place to start if you're figuring out how you can
yeah.
implement this.
All right, I'm going to give. We got time for one more, so I'm gonna let you have this one. I think we've had. I think I've had a couple. So give me your last one, and we'll call it a day.
All right. Let's go with fun. That's what we started to talk about in the beginning. Athletes forgetting to have fun, losing a
Hmm.
bit of perspective as they start to ramp things up. And want to hear, I mean, you've coached some of the most successful athletes, successful executives who are also successful in sport. And I think back to the Super Bowl, which wasn't that long ago, when you see people winning, whether it's individuals or team, they have this swagger about them. They've worked really
Yeah.
hard, but they also emit this energy as if they're having a lot of fun and they're really enjoying the process. I think you see a lot when you look at professional cyclists when they ride together, they have a lot of fun. Yes, they work hard. So just your how you think athletes make that mistake of not having fun or not having perspective about their performance journey as they wrap things up.
Yeah, it's interesting you've gone there. What comes. There's two things that come up for me on this. I reflect to the pro squad, world class sport. Yeah, like ruthless, and with the pros that we coached, and I got to coach a lot of pros, probably more than 50 over the course of the career. But we always had 10 to 12, and we had some real personalities. And at the foundation of the results that we did achieve was I really wanted athletes to be healthy, and that's well versed. We've talked about that. So having this performance based layer, as we call it now, and those that were most successful, the ones that had the right mindset with that. That was really the differentiator. So actually, the most talented athletes that I coached weren't always the ones that you've heard all of their names and the stories on this show about. They were the ones that really unlocked were the ones with the right mindset. But the thing that took it to the next level, where I almost talk about sometimes performance was inevitable,
Mhm.
and we were just was team and the absolute power of the reinforcement of being a part of a team and all of the support and accountability that went along with that, and it diluted some of the pressure on each of the athletes' shoulders. But a big part of it was high standards. Every athlete was highly ambitious. I was freaking competitive and ambitious. I wanted to coach world champions, period. Like it was like results driven, but we had fun. And it the world was actually pretty simple for us. We had really the saying, "Nail the basics." We want you to focus on the boulders, not the sand. So these are the non-negotiable habits that everyone is gonna adhere to. We are all part of this team. We're all looking to become the best that we can be, and everyone's welcome in this journey. Okay, there's sort of there's a couple of teams in Britain where they have a no dickheads policy. Okay, pardon the French, but it's like no, this is us. We're Purple Patch, and it's really fun when we go on training camps. We would laugh and we would be silly and we would have fun, and we were deadly serious about performance. This is people giving up the normal chapter of life to go and see how good they could be with no certainty of financial success. They're having fun. Like a lifetime of experiences. Laura Siddle, Rachel Joyce, Chris Liedo, Tim, just fun. And it was such a catalyst. It was so liberating. And interestingly, with the executives and C-suite folk that I work with, it was exactly the same.
Mhm.
Where I was like, first thing I want to do is get you better energy, optimal cognitive health, etc. Commit to this journey. You got to do it, whether you're climbing Kilimanjaro or training for an Ironman, getting ready for a marathon, whatever it might be. But what's starting to happen and it does take commitment and it takes organization and it takes some certain amount of sort of sacrifice. Well, I don't like that word, but you know what I mean. It's like, yeah, I'm doing this, but what would come out of it was this real buzz. Like it's just like, wow, I feel more in control and I feel like I'm making progress. And it's really fun. And in both of those, the joy of it was not by any victory, any world championship, any, breakthrough crossing the line. It was just the process and the people that really, really, where you look at them, you're like, how the hell do you do that? It's the ones that just freaking love it. That conversation that I had a couple of weeks ago with Panos, great example. He's done a whole bunch of amazing physical stuff, let alone how successful he's been in life. But the heartbeat of it
Mhm.
is fun and ensuring that this journey for me of taking on this challenge doesn't need to be a second job. No one cares how fast you are. No one care. People want you, your friends, your family, I think, want you to be successful, want you to have a great race, want you to cross the first finish line or qualify for Ironman or whatever it might be. But you're doing this for yourself. And the more that you embrace the journey, the better results are. And I think in many ways, I'm going on a monologue here, so sorry, Max, but
Mhm.
I think the metrics of this can become really paralyzing because people feel like they're getting judged every day.
Mhm.
And, they put up barriers, and that's why metrics are quantifiable stuff is very, very important. At the same time, gotta have fun. Gotta have a little bit of poetry in this, you know?
Yeah, I love that. It's true, and I love that. That's why I asked the question. And to wrap it up, because I know we are coming up to time, we both have to continue working for the day. Tie together the fun with everything we just talked about. you're only going to be able to have fun if you do those first things that we talked about, right? Because when you don't have clarity and you're not making good decisions and you're fatigued and you're getting injured and all the different things that we talked about, from not fueling, from not prioritizing strength training, from having too much intensity across disciplines, you're not going to be able to have fun. So on one, it's chicken or the egg type situation. It's you need to remember to have fun, but you also need to do the things right in order to be able to have fun. So
Yeah.
that's what comes to mind with athletes. But yeah, it is really
Yeah,
shackling.
have standards for yourself, and look, y- winning is fun. You
Hmm.
talked about that, like people have a swagger. In order to do that, that doesn't happen by accident, and so you need to commit. You need to do the right thing, and a Purple Patch brand value is serious with a wink. We are deadly serious about performance. Today's live bike class is a great example. How many times were we being silly in there?
Hmm.
At the same time, it was very, very important to me as a coach that people were doing that session correctly. I want you to think about terrain. I want you to feel that. That's really important. And we can have Nico undo his big hair and have Angus do a fake legal disclaimer, pretending that we're going to get sued. Like all this funny, silly stuff, because it's fun. It should be additive to life.
And
And so maybe that's a lovely way to end it.
yeah,
It's
it
great.
is. No, lots of good thoughts. Thinking about all the athletes that need to have more fun. That should separate a little bit of their self worth from their training. Be
There
an
you go.
episode for a topic for another episode.
Another day. There you go. That's a good episode we're gonna do. Self-worth and training. Let's separate them, and success will come, and you'll also have more fun. Max, thank you very much for joining. I very much enjoy these conversations. I think they're really, really valuable, and appreciate your perspective.
Thank you for having me. It's a lot of fun. I look forward to keep doing it.
Awesome. We'll see you next
All right.
time. Take care, guys. Guys, thanks so much for joining, and thank you for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the new format. You can never miss an episode by simply subscribing. Head to the Purple Patch channel of YouTube and you will find it there, and you could subscribe. Of course, I'd like to ask you, if you will subscribe, also share it with your friends, and it's really helpful if you leave a nice positive review in the comments. Now, any questions that you have, let me know. Feel free to add a comment and I will try my best to respond and support you on your performance journey. And in fact, as we commence this video podcast experience, if you have any feedback at all, as mentioned earlier in the show, we would love your help in helping us to improve. Simply email us at info@purplepatchfitness.com or leave it in the comments of the show at the Purple Patch page, and we will get you dialed in. We'd love constructive feedback. We are in a growth mindset, as we like to call it. And so feel free to share with your friends. But as I said, let's build this together. Let's make it something special. It's really fun. We're really trying hard to make it a special experience, and we want to welcome you into the Purple Patch community. With that, I hope you have a great week. Stay healthy, have fun, keep smiling, doing whatever you do. Take care.